Our HR specialists are certified and experienced. We work across many different industries, but specialize in healthcare and nonprofit sectors. Using best practices, proactive thinking, and with a deep well of knowledge, we collaborate to support companies in the areas of recruitment, benefits, payroll, training, engagement, and coaching. We're here to provide support from admin to a strategic level. Our flexible pricing model keeps services within reach and designed to meet business needs, whether long-term, interim, full-time, part-time, or as needed. People operations, when done right, balances helping staff to be successful at work while moving the company forward in meeting business goals. Noble Hearts is here as your human resources partner. Visit nobleheartshr.com and talk to us today. People.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us for Brewster Chamber of Commerce's webinar tonight on how to attract, retain, onboard and retain quality employment or employees. We do appreciate that Matinah Drew, the President and CEO of Noble Hearts HR Consulting, is here. Matinah is very passionate about HR and was very willing to share some very good tips and tricks for us as small and medium-sized business owners and people who hire for those businesses, and how she does it so that it is both cost-effective and saves you some time as well, and some stress, I'm quite sure. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Matinah Drew of Noble Hearts HR Consulting.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. In today's presentation, I'll be sharing with you insights and strategies regarding one of the most talked about concerns that businesses are having today, besides COVID in general, and that's staffing and retention. But before we get started, here's a quick overview of what we're going to cover. We're going to talk about recruiting investments, the value of company differentiators, attracting the right candidate, qualifying the right candidate, on the onboarding experience, employee retention, and the opportunity for anyone that's interested for a free 30-minute consult so we can talk more specifically about your business needs. A little bit about myself before we get started. I have been a Brewster resident for over 20 years, and I have been in human resources for over 20 years. Yes, it is a passion. I have, in my experience, predominantly worked in healthcare and human services, and then I started to consult in 2014, and then 2019 incorporated Noble Hearts HR Consulting. And we work across the United States, and we work with many different companies of different sizes, from inception, from the startup phase all the way to mid-sized employers. And we're often the pinch hitters. We step in where there's a need for infrastructure development, when someone is in transition with staff, or just needs an additional arm to support the current staff that they have to achieve specific goals. The types of services that we provide are HR operations, recruitment services, payroll administration, custom training and development, and performance coaching and advisors. Now, before we go further, I just want to make sure everybody's clear. This is an interactive process. I have a lot of knowledge and I'm looking forward to sharing it, but I also want this to be an experience where all of you have an opportunity to share your experiences, your needs, and then it kind of helps to fine tune the direction of the conversation. So let me open up with a couple of discussion points. As business owners, finding the right staff is a top priority and requires an investment. Would you agree with that statement, yes or no? Okay. And I am curious as to what types of investments as business owners have you made in recruiting? What are some of the things that you have done to find the staff that you are looking for? Any thoughts? No one's doing any kind of recruiting out there right now?
No, we really don't. We use Indeed. We're nonprofits, so we have.
Well, I've come out of the nonprofit and human services, and I'm going to tell you some of the things that I do to kind of stretch the dollar and get the goals met, and it's beyond Indeed.
There's a world outside there, huh?
So yes. And where do you find your biggest challenges? How is Indeed meeting your needs? Is Indeed giving you the caliber of candidates that you're looking for, or the quantity of candidates that you're looking for? Are you finding that you're getting what you need for your businesses?
No, not really. I noticed we get kind of a broad base of people that apply for jobs that they're not typically suited for. Almost as if they see, they hit the apply button and it's the same resume and cover letter shared across the board.
I'll touch base on why that is.
Okay.
So let's talk about some of the popular recruiting investments that I do see employers doing of all different sizes. Doesn't have to be a nonprofit. Posting positions on popular job boards like Indeed and Hudson Valley Help Wanted or ZipRecruiter, and sitting back and hoping that candidates are going to see your job postings and apply. So that at this time is probably, and we'll go in a little bit more in depth, but not the most effective approach at this point, because there is so many people looking for jobs, so many employers using the job boards. It's a huge conundrum of people and employers, and it's a lot of information. So we're going to talk about how to pull out the people that you actually need. What you just described as candidates that come through your pipeline that are not a fit, those are the robo resume submissions in most cases. When you go on Indeed and you put your resume up, they ask you, do you want us to automatically apply you to positions that fit what you're looking for? Now, many of the people are behind the scenes, they're programmers. They're hoping they get the connection right. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But when you see repeat offenders, it's more so because they just automatically are being sent to you. They don't even know that their resume was submitted, strictly because they pressed the button for automatic apply. Word of mouth continues to be very popular, sourcing at schools and community organizations. The use of temp agencies is a go-to for many organizations. And the thing that has always been a pet peeve of mine with temp agencies is they bill you one rate that includes the hourly rate the employee has to pay, plus any taxes, payroll taxes, plus their administrative costs in one fee. So in the event that that person has to work overtime, you're paying time and a half on part of that fee, and part of that fee is administrative costs. So while I get what you'd have to pay an employee to work, and I understand payroll taxes, why should I be paying time and a half for administrative costs? That doesn't change. If you worked 10 hours or 40 hours, that cost pretty much remains the same. So I always thought that was an interesting little problem that I think the temp agencies have. And then on the other side, there's the fee that if you want to hire this person that's now worked with you for a while, that they ask you to pay to transition them to a regular status position. And then there are those people that are looking for permanent placement services like executive search firms, and they pay a percentage of an annual salary. 25 to 50% of the first year's annual salary goes towards the recruitment service. And with the use of the technology that's out there, experienced recruiters know that this can be done in a more concise fashion. So these are some of the things that I see a lot of companies that are doing to find candidates. And some of them are working, some of them will be improved with some modifications, but these are the most common strategies I see applied. Now let's talk about some of the more cost-effective strategies that I have found success with. One of the very first things I try to emphasize to people is the importance of your work culture. It influences your brand. People know of your business before they hit the door. Why? Because, for example, when you put your resume on Indeed, they also not only ask you, do you want automatic resume or automatic applying for jobs? They're also going to ask you about where have you worked and can you review that company? So they're getting a wide breadth of experience about what people feel for that company as an employee. And then employees can go in, whether it's Glassdoor or Indeed, and pull up your reviews. And that gives a person an impression as to whether or not this is the right setting for me, be it the culture, be it the benefits, be it the compensation. They get a real good look at you before they even apply, or if they are entertaining you, they're looking at that as well. So it's really important as an employer, you pay attention to your overall brand presence in the public, because people are judging you before they even meet you. Some of the things that you can do on a proactive side is have a social media presence that you are in control of the spin of how it's presented to the public. So as an employer, if you just allow for the impression of others who have exited or may still be working with you to dominate, you yourself are not really giving yourself the opportunity for people to see you from another vantage point, which is your presentation of your business through having a Facebook group or having a social media presence on LinkedIn, where people can learn more about the activities, the relationships, the things that you do as an employer. Having a LinkedIn profile that's updated is something I would encourage you to have of your employees, because they can become brand advocates for you, which means that if you're on their social media thread, be it LinkedIn or any Facebook, you would be able to now have their group of people see your marketing, your needs, your experiences. So it helps to actually grow your reputation. Following the business on social media is another thing that you can encourage your employees to do. So that, again, you're looking for volume. Volume means impact and influence, and that continues to help build out your reputation. And as people are looking for jobs, they'll remember what they saw as an experience or feedback. And that's important for an employer to continue to attract potential candidates to their place of business. And then have posts that are on your social media that are employee-centered, topics that are of interest to them, and even quotes. If you do post surveys, things that your employees say about you that's positive, put it out there for people to see, because that creates engagement and interest. The other thing is be mindful of be responsive to reviews. So while you are encouraged to create your own social media presence and market your business, you also want to make sure that if there are reviews out there that aren't always complimentary, we have to be open that we are not perfect. We are going to get constructive feedback. Be responsive to it in a positive way, basically letting people know that you're sorry for the experience, to reach out, we'll do better next time, what you'll do different. So it continues to help to build a positive impression of your business, your willingness to learn and to grow, and not just ignore the fact that that review is sitting there. The disadvantage to an employer when they ignore the review is the fact that that review takes more of a prominent image in a person's mind, and there's nothing to counter it. You want to always have the countering part, and that's important for employers to remember. And then here are some newer techniques when it comes to interviewing, especially in light of COVID. Drive-up interviews. This is very popular, especially with food service. They actually had the drive-up windows, so they just basically told people to drive up and they interview them right there. And every employer can kind of think about the different settings, especially now that the weather's warmer, that can be done. Virtual job fairs are very popular, but look at the approach on how you do that, because you want to make sure that it's not too cumbersome or complex, that it's easy for people to engage with both on their computer or on a mobile device. So a lot of little details that go into that, but that can be a successful model. The other thing that people are asking people to do now is 2-minute introduction videos. Who are you? Tell me about yourself. Show me your personality. So in addition to what you've put in content on a resume, you're actually including a little video snippet. I find that very popular on a lot of the job boards like Fiverr and Upworks, where people are constantly promoting themselves as freelancers and contractors. They have introduction videos along with their resume of what they've done. And the very important flexible interview windows. I have to tell you, people don't necessarily want to interview between the 9 to 5 hours. And I'll tell you why. If they're competing now with what's going on at home with kids in school, they have their regular jobs. They're now trying to balance so much more in a very small setting or in a setting where there's a lot more people. So being flexible about when you interview is attractive. You interview when it's convenient for the candidate. Let it be an evening or a weekend. For example, we interview from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. and we interview on Sundays. So that way we're hitting people across all different time frequencies that make it convenient for them. They get to pick. If you are an overnight worker and you want to hit us in the afternoon, that's fine. If you are a daytime person and your kids are in school and you prefer to interview around 6 o'clock after dinner, that's fine. We work with you. That gets more candidates seen. It also gets them to be more relaxed. You need them to be relaxed so that they can have an engaging conversation. Your work culture should be aligned with your business values and principles. People judge you. People will judge you. If your company has put out a Facebook presence or a social media presence and it's representing a certain set of values, they're going to expect you to live up to those values. They are more about holding you accountable for that, and they will move on if they feel it is too extremely different than what they expected. So it's really important that whatever you represent, that you make sure that you're consistent in your practice, because people will judge you for it. Okay. Now, what I have here, because I'm also the HR director over at Arms Acres, is just to show you some positive and encouraging ways that you can use posts. We have our own Facebook group for employees. And we do different things to kind of engage staff throughout the year. Yes, that is a Christmas tree. I have a very dynamic HR generalist who also loves social media. So she's very creative and she has a flair for party planning and engaging. So she took the Christmas tree, and every month there is a holiday event or something. Like now we're in March Madness. So now we have basketballs all over the Christmas tree. This is how we keep the Christmas tree alive all year long. Everyone donates $2. They get to wear jeans on a certain day out of the week, and those funds will go to the charity of choice of the organization. So, and in this case, it goes to this young lady, Shamoya McKenzie's foundation. So just a way, and we promote this. We let people know these are the kinds of activities and things that we do at Arms Acres. And again, all intended. So as we're marketing ourselves as a place of choice, these are some of the experiences you can expect to have. Now, and by the way, let me pause because I do get excited and I keep talking. Does anybody have any questions, comments, need me to elaborate on anything? Good to go. All right. The next thing I want to talk about is this proactive recruiting strategy, which is really important. Boolean searches. Basically, this is targeted recruitment using programming language to identify and attract active and passive candidates and the specific niche skills, education, job experience that you need them to have. What I've given you down here is an example of how I use Boolean language to help me find the candidates. I have to tell you, I don't post on Indeed extensively, literally very limited. I spend my money on resume databases. They're more affordable. I'm able to actually find the candidates that I'm looking for in a shorter window of time. I find the ones that have just put their resumes up. So I know that they're not, they're looking right now. And I've learned the language that brings the candidate that I'm looking for to the forefront. Boolean is 3 simple words: and, not, or. Those 3 words. And you just have to figure out for each of the platforms how they use it. Some want you to use the capital letters, some want you to use one letter capital and the others are lowercase. You just got to figure out for Indeed or ZipRecruiter or even Google search how they want the Boolean to be set up with those 3 words. And as you can see, I pulled in here Human Resources Director with quotations, and I want people who are certified, SHRM, CP, or CP. I had 71 resumes that I pulled, okay, for those specific skill sets. Oops, it's right there. For those specific skill sets. So I'm not just looking through a bunch of resumes that are robo sent to me or people that are actually not a fit because they've applied and they just think that this might be something of interest. I'm pulling in the candidates that are truly a fit for what I'm looking for. And of course, in Indeed, you can narrow down that search even more by looking at how many years of experience you want, or this particular type of company that they have worked at that might be of interest to you. Also, if you know you have a competitor in the area and that person has that competitor on their resume, like CBS, you could put down Human Resources, or you could put down a DSP and you could put the company. So that way you could see if there's anyone in specific industries that you may need to attract in, you could see who they are that has their resume up. And if it's something that's fairly recent, I tend to jump right on that. And I tend to have a turnaround time faster with that. Let's take a look. And the other thing that I want to talk about is customizing recruiting campaigns. This is important. Recruiting is no longer just generic words on paper, presenting the job title, and here's the essential functions and the qualifications. There has to be something that attracts a candidate. We are an information overload. We have so much on social media that attracts our attention. We have so many things that we're doing on computers for life, whether it's school or shopping. So therefore, with everything that we sign up for that populates into our inbox, you need to find a way to stand out. So these are some of the things that you can do. Create, and I'll use this as an example, little commercials. There we go.
Rapid resume review and hiring. As a direct support professional, you will provide support for people in an adult day program and residential program. You will get to know them on a personal level as you assist them with the implementation of personal plans, goals, and objectives. You will help to maintain their home environment assist with their performance of independent living skills, administer medication, and escort the residents to recreational and community activities. Bring your compassion and dependability to work with others devoted to truly make a difference in the lives of people with developmental disabilities. Put people first. Make a difference in someone's life while helping you to help yourself. For more information, visit our website, www.nobleheartshrconsulting.com.
Now, this was under our old logo, but this is something that we did for a client, a local client, where we customized their services, and then we can promote it in a way that people could see it quickly in an engaging way that would intrigue them to kind of go further in the process. Also help to explain what we do and the population that we serve. But as you're preparing your job postings, think about, can I present this in a video? Think about, is there a concise way? Is there a fun, attention-grabbing tagline that will grab a person and bring them in? And make sure you have hashtags. Find the hashtags that are relevant to the types of positions that you're looking for, or the population that you're looking to attract. Okay, that's my suggestion there for customizing your recruitment campaigns. Don't just post the words, figure out how you can make it intriguing to grab attention. The value of differentiators. So what this is really speaking to is, how do you stand out? What is unique and different about you? What ends up happening for a lot of employers is they give the essential functions, they talk about the required skills. But when you are in a highly competitive job market, as we are now, and it is employee based, you're going to have to figure out, well, what's different about our company that makes people want to stay? So this is the type of stuff that really you have to go back and really reflect on and think about. I'm giving you 3 examples of things that I often hear people are interested in. Home and work-life balance, particularly now with work and the kids being home and trying to figure out, when does work end and I have to pick up and do the school work for the kids, and then still have to do my household chores, and there's less separation. Having the opportunity to work with your employees and say, we offer flexible schedules. We will work with you on work arrangements. So for example, if you find it easier to work in the evening because things are calmer, then you might be open to allowing them to do that if it's feasible for that type of position. If you can balance it where they can do some of their work, or use some additional technology that might help them with that work, that's something else. Think about the schedules and think about where you can meet your operational needs, but also meet the needs of the employees themselves. Employee development. There are a lot of newbies out there. There are a lot of people looking for opportunities. And now that we're in this era of COVID where everything is remote, you have to go out and make sure that that there's knowledge that you're offering internships and mentorship. There's a lot of people looking for that first opportunity or to grow a new set of skills. I will give an example of a time where I introduced an internship, and it was successful. We did it was working again with the developmentally disabled, and we were struggling with some of our recruitment, and we opened up and had internship programs for high school juniors and seniors. They worked in day program and offered them an opportunity to start in the summer. If they agreed to work with us through the school year, come in off their days off, we would give them a flexible schedule, which was great because during the holidays, when the DSPs would want to take off, you had an extra set of hands. But what was nice about it, at that junior and senior year of high school, you don't always know about this industry. And you might be looking for an opportunity once you graduate. That doesn't always mean I'm going straight into college. Doesn't mean that I don't need a supplement while I'm in college. And this is something that you had an experience and you were mentored through during your high school years. And then when they start college, we offered them flexible schedules because they came through the internship program. So we found longevity. We found people that stayed long-term and repeatedly came for the summer. I will say my son was one of the first interns, and he is still a DSP. He's now a DSP at Park, and he loves what he does. And I remember the first time he did it, I said to him, because as a parent, you assign your kids up or pretty much anything you think would be a good influence. I said to him, did I get this one right? And he looked at me, he said, you got this one right. And clearly I must have, because he's 22 and he's still a DSP, he's in school for it, and he loves what he does. He spends more time there than he does here at home. So that's not a bad thing when you love what you do. Well-being initiatives are really important to consider. Think about what personal things that you can offer to employees to help them in their quality of life. Again, for many people, just having a momentary break, childcare assistance, in-home experiences, because we at one point we weren't going out as much, but things are starting to opening up. But doesn't mean that employees that are working from home don't need that break, something that keeps them relaxed and engaged and focused. So you can offer guitar lessons or painting classes or other discounts. Find uplifting and encouraging videos, memes, jokes. Have virtual meetups with your staff, things that keep them engaged and letting them know that you are not just looking at them from the work they perform, but you want to make sure that they're connecting with the business and the people that work with them. Okay, so these are just some of the things that if I wasn't an employee and I saw this as part of your culture, and again, these are things that you could build out on your social media page. These are things that you can take quotes and have it shared. It just helps you to stand out as a place of choice. When people come into Arms Acres and we do their orientation, the first thing I always say to them, thank you for choosing us, because there are so many other options. So when you choose, you should take pride in that. Okay. I'll pause at this point because I know I speak a lot. Questions, comments, thoughts, reactions? We're good?
Matinah, I have a question. We've heard a lot from your side of as employers, how to attract employees. What happens when you get your employees, but then the turnaround and they leave for whatever reason? Does I think a lot of employers probably don't want to put the time or energy into a lot of that culture because they feel like they're just going to lose their employees anyway. How would you respond to that?
I actually think that employers need to rethink that whole approach. If people are leaving, be curious as to why. Maybe there is something going on in the culture that needs to shift to help bring in their retention and their interest to stay. People don't necessarily always want to change. They just want to feel, and I'll tell you this from someone who recruits in human services. I see DSPs at every one of these companies. I see them just floating from company to company. And I ask them, why did you move on? It's not the work, it's the culture. A culture makes a person feel warm and welcome. Think about where you spend most of your alert hours out of a day. You spend it at work. You want to feel invested. You want to feel interested. You want to feel valued. So you got to take a look at what may be happening in the culture that may not necessarily hit home with our employees. People need investment in order to give you a return. And so if you choose to take the attitude that there is nothing else I can do, then you basically taken out of the deposit and said, I'm closing the bank account because I'm not going to be able to get too much out of them. And in the end, you find people will disconnect and they'll just move on to the next place, hoping to have a better experience. It is important to think culture. It is important to remember that people want to have an experience that makes them feel engaged. But I will tell you, is retention easy? No. Culture is a part of it. And the mindset has to shift to make sure they understand people are valued. They're going to bring something to the table and you're going to reap the benefits of it. So they're going to expect something in return. So you got to, think from that perspective. When it comes to people leaving at a rapid pace, you got to start to look at the why. Is it compensation? Was there experiences there? Is it the location? Is it the shift? Take a look at why so that you can examine and see what you might be able to do to counter that. Because look, how many of us actually thought that this remote work setting and all the different things that we're doing was even an option? I come out of a company that is very traditional in their business model. They had to expand and they expanded rapidly, and now everybody calls it pivoting, to now adjust to where we are today, where we do a lot of things virtually, things that weren't even thought about. And as my CEO would say, many of these practices, even when COVID ends, will remain in place. But something occurred to trigger them to look beyond the obvious. So just to keep an open mind is what I would tell them, and kind of take and be curious. Take a deeper look into why people might be transitioning on. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for putting this all together for us. I'm finding a lot of very useful information.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. Cool. Let's see. So a little bit differentiated about Noble Hearts. I mentioned earlier, I have a little pet peeve with temp agencies. Well, my pet peeve was really about transparent billing and not having that administrative cost built into the bill rate. As an employer, you are paying if you paid the person to be on your payroll, you are paying an admin fee, you are paying an hourly rate, and you have to, of course, pay taxes. But that bill rate shouldn't be built into that, and it should be fixed. It should be something that, yes, for me having to do their payroll, for someone on my team to have to do their payroll, I agree. There should be an administrative fee. Just, I built it out so that when you get a bill rate, you get two. You get a bill rate that fluctuates based on hours worked, which really incorporates what you would typically pay. And then you have an administrative cost rate, which is a fixed rate. And it's based on the number of employees you may have or the complexity of your company and the things that, there's nuances that go into it, but it's a rate that once agreed upon, no matter how many hours that person's work, that rate stays the same. And we don't offer transfer fees. Everybody transitions over at no additional fee. We also offer direct hire placement and staff augmentation. And what that means is where others may have an executive search firm that is offering you a rate that is based on a percentage of their annual salary, we're actually doing it by blocks of hours because we use so much technology and we understand how to find the candidates faster and get the level of person that you want for your position. We actually encourage people to buy blocks of hours instead of based on an annual based on a percentage of an annual salary. So for example, we work with $40 to $60 based on the complexity of the position. And you have a starting rate per hour that is at 40. And if we say to you, based on our experience, it may take us 3 to 5 weeks to fill a position. The example down here below tells you right here, if we have you at 5 hours a week at $40 an hour for 3 weeks to fill a position, that's $600. What I like about this is you can see your budget, you can control your budget, you can decide if you want to give us more hours or less hours. It really gives you an opportunity to control and see how much you're investing in recruiting as opposed to having an unpredictable number because you can't guarantee how many hours somebody's going to work. Does that make sense? And with our particular strategy, I think it's reasonable and fair. And I guess that's my approach. I want to be fair to the people that I work with. And this is a strategy I see a lot of freelancers and remote recruiters. That's how we operate. We don't do the traditional agency approach. We do blocks of hours. Now, once you've identified your candidate, let's talk about qualifying the right candidate, what it is that you have to take into consideration. So there is a very important thing to keep in mind. Know the difference between what is essential versus optional. And think about where you can be flexible. You can have a very clear picture of what you believe you need for your company. And so you want to make sure you know what's critical, got to have these particular skill sets and always take into consideration the mix of your staff. How many people do you have that are very experienced from those that may be green and developing? Because that will tell you also when it comes down to what's essential for you to have as far as skill and knowledge base. And then you go into where can you be flexible? What can I pull out that if it's not there, I could still be okay with the candidate coming in with these skill sets and I could develop them in that area. Or I have enough knowledge base in the department that if that person doesn't come in with that on, hit that on the ground running, I can afford to have that person still here because I have another set of people that could actually build in that knowledge base and help that person learn and grow in it. It's also important that you know upfront the number of work hours that you want, whether this position is a remote, if it's on-site or an office, or is it a blend of both? Education, skills, experience, and compensation, all things that you need to think about when you're designing a position and an opportunity, so that way you know what you need to offer and how to screen down the candidates that are best fit for you. And then prepare your interview questions. Going into an interview now, everybody can go on Indeed or go on to Google and find interview questions for any type of position that you may want. The point of the question is that it should be a starting point that evolves into a conversation. When I see recruiters do the drill, which is basically I ask you the question and I write down the response, move to the next question, write down the response. That is not a conversation, that is a drill. You want to take a well-framed question and build a conversation so that the person relaxes, so that you can get a chance to really get to know them beyond what they have told you about their resume and their experience, get a little bit of sense of their personality and who they are. And there's a very important practice I always encourage recruiters and interviewers to do, the 75-25 rule. 75% of your time should be listening, only 25% should be talking. I have some interviewers who will spend a lot more time talking, thinking they have to convince the person. But a person who's interviewing likes to be heard. You want to engage them and tell you who they are. So you need to come up with well-framed questions in advance that help you to get to know the person and their skill sets and evolve into a conversation. And does that take practice? Yes. But it's something, it's a very important skill to have as a recruiter, because you don't want to just do the drill, because the drill doesn't give you a real sense of the person. It just tells you that they might have been on the same website and read the same answer they should be giving you to that question. That's not what you want. You want personality. You want them to be relaxed. You want them to show you what they know and who they are. Any questions or comments at this point? Thoughts? Okay. So the next piece, onboarding, especially important now. In human resources, onboarding is defined as the process of familiarizing a new employee with the organization. Onboarding begins from the moment an offer is made to the employee until the time the employee becomes a productive member of the team. With everything being digital, it's really, really important that as an employer, you set up a really great onboarding experience. Because for many people, that is really going to be the main introduction. And if they're working remote, you're going to have pretty much that be their first experience. And that's pretty much important for everybody to stay engaged. So what you can do is start with a workflow plan, see how it's going to play itself out. Sit down with the group and talk about, okay, what's going to happen? How do we attract the candidate? Talk about once we do and we want to extend the offer, what are the steps, the phases, what are the experiences we want them to have? What kind of information do we think they need to know? Know your offer details. Understand compliance. There's a lot more laws out there. The laws are constantly changing now with COVID. So you really have to be mindful when you're bringing someone in, what's required. And remain accessible to questions and issues, because there are some people that are really strong with technology. There are people that are middle of the road, and there are people who are not. Don't lose your patience with them. This is the time for you to have patience. You need people to come in and you need them to stay engaged. If they get frustrated, they will walk. So it's really important that you stay accessible. And then prompt candidate follow-up. Again, having routine check-ins kind of helps so that questions don't pop up or they don't feel frustrated by the fact that they're sitting there looking at, why can't my resume, why am I filling out an application and it keeps stopping me because I don't have a resume. I just want to fill out the application. They may get frustrated, never call you back again. They just move on. If you have set points where you're going to go back and engage with them and say, hey, how are you doing? Anything I can help you with? That's going to keep them engaged and interested and helping them through the process. Send encouraging messages. If they have successfully met a stage, send them a positive thank you or a meme or something that encourages them to keep going. Thank you. We're still interested in you. We're looking forward to you starting. That kind of drives their interest again, and it shows them that they're just not a number on a paper. And whatever technology you're using for your process, try to make it as easy as possible. Do not go overboard. And make sure it's a blend between computer and mobile devices. And make sure that you customize so that the experience is just what you need them to have and that you're gathering the information that you need. Okay. Any other questions or comments, thoughts, reflections? And the last thing I want to talk about is employee retention. And this is important because once you do find your candidates and you do get them through the onboarding process, you want to hold on to them. So I'm going to tell you what I have come across in some of my recommendations. It's really important, whether it's giving people guidance from the front or giving them correction direction. Think about what it is that you want their experience to be like in that exchange. So come up with a process. I know it seems like a lot, but thinking it through is really important, because once it's out of your mouth, you can't take it back. If your body language and the things coming out of your mouth are not lined up, you can't take it back. It leaves an impression. One of the things I encourage leaders and staff to do is find a soundboard. A soundboard is someone that helps you with the presentation. How does this sound? Well, how would you react if you heard this? That is the person that kind of helps you work out that process. So that way, when you walk out, you'll feel comfortable. And find a person that's not always going to give you yes. Find that person that is going to give you that opposing view or that angle or that, give you another vantage point to look at. Because if you get the yes person who's always going to agree with you, it doesn't really help you in properly shaping the conversation or preparing for it. You need the person that's going to be objective and well-rounded. And the buffer is deciding if you need another person in the room to help you convey your message, to communicate. A lot of times people think that, okay, I know what I want to say, I should be able just to say it. But once the person reacts, you're going to have a response. Can you manage your emotions so that you stay on course? Are you going to get distracted? A third party who has a role as a buffer, and I have to tell you, in my role, I get used as a buffer a lot. I hear from both sides, but I help each other communicate the message that the other is trying to get across, so that by the time we leave the room, we have outcomes, we have understanding. Not everybody's going to agree, but they were heard, and that goes a long way. Emotional health and well-being is, keep in mind, we are in stressful times and people need patience. Supervisors and leaders need to recognize that. And we can't just go by, this is the rule, this is what I expect. The human factor weighs in very heavily at this point. And also employers are encouraged to have EAP services so they can make referrals to community organizations to make sure that they can connect with the different services their employees may need. Invite and be open to feedback. Pulse surveys are really cool. You can do that on SurveyMonkey. They can be short, concise. You can ask 2 questions. You can ask a question a week to make sure you're getting a barometer on how people are feeling or what they may need as a service, or just how the culture feels. When you're talking about what would that person do if they were in a position where they saw high turnover, throw out a pulse survey. Literally, you got them on apps, you got them on computers. They literally take 2 minutes, and the person can answer a question a week or 2 questions a week just to give you a sense of how things are going. And they do the whole accumulation of all the stats for you on those different types of platforms. Routinely communicate in what I call concise, informative, and memorable ways. One of the things I'm really big on is in HR. During my formal years of training, I was taught to write a mean policy, very wordy, very detailed. No one's reading that. They scan it if I'm lucky. Right now you're competing with videos, memes, all other things that are going to get their attention. I can tell you no one's going to read a lengthy, well-written policy, but we need to have them. But what I do is I have that communication specialist in my department take that same content and she puts it into videos. She puts it into short, engaging PowerPoints where there's flashing lights, quick little sayings, memes, things that heighten the attention, but bring it in a fun and informative way. Really important skill to have, and really important for an employer to understand. You want to get certain messages across to your staff, you got to look at the method that you're doing it, and you got to connect with what will get their attention. Be realistic and honest. Trust is important right now. There's enough change going on. So people need to feel that they're engaging with people that are actually sincere. Without that, people will bounce if they don't feel that they can connect with you and that this is not authentic. They're not going to get everything they want. They're not going to hear everything they want. But at least if they feel they trust you, you'll have their loyalty and their respect. And that goes a long way. Any other questions or comments? You're such a quiet group. I'm so used to so much more.
Matinah, I just wanted to clarify, EAP are the employment assistance programs?
Yes, employee assistance programs, yes. So that pretty much wraps up my presentation, and I'm certainly open to anybody having questions now, or if at any point in the future, like I can see on the slide here, I am offering free 30-minute consults. So if you feel you just want to brainstorm or think about something, certainly reach out.
Matinah, would you have any advice about fast tracking the hiring process for the OPWDD agencies?
Staff tracking?
No, for new hire orientation, fast tracking the new hire orientation process.
I think every agency has to take a look at what the governing agency, which in this case OPWDD or OASIS, whoever the governing agency is, where they are allowing you to have flexibility, because many of them are. Some of them are allowing you to have some baseline information and then moving the person forward. Because they do realize with COVID, there was a high circle of people getting sick and then coming back to work. So they had to maintain coverage based on the care services that need to be provided. So I think it's a good starting place to figure out where the level of flexibility is, because they are out there. And then just be clear and consistent with how you apply it, so no one's given any kind of perception of preferential treatment.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
All right.
Well, listen, I appreciate the time and the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Matinah. This was very enlightening. And I think a lot of companies might have a little work to do, but I think it will pay off in the end with happy employees and a much better employee base, a much more fit to their, as you said, to their culture, and to their happiness and longevity as an employee in the company. So thank you so much, Matinah Drew of Noble Hearts HR Consulting. And thank you everybody for taking the time to join us at our webinar. And this will be available on YouTube as well in the future on the Brewster Chamber page. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.